Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. It's great to see some familiar names from our last series last year. We in back in 2025, we did a five-part series also where we kind of discussed things from prompt engineering to reviewing the AI output to personalizing your new AI tools or to your tools that you have available. So in this series, we'll be running a five-part series again from March to July where we'll be having a range of guest speakers, both from our internal team, and we'll also have representatives from regulatory bodies to really answer the questions you've been asking us over the past couple of months on regulatory expectations when it comes to AI. So, really looking forward to the series, and I think we have very good topics. Planned. I know, Emma, you're going to pop in the brochure to the series in the chat. So if you want more information or details, you can have a look at that. So in this series, we'll be really providing a structured, practical roadmap for adopting AI in a regulated environment. So we'll be talking about things from identifying new use cases, managing an AI workflow, making sure the human is in the loop and how that works, and also discussing change management and how that impacts AI projects also. So today's focus is resetting the conversation. So we're going to focus on what's actually happening in regulatory quality R&D teams. We're going to be introducing some new terms and highlighting the risks. So that's what we have in store today. So for anyone who hasn't met me or seen me on these webinars, my name is Ciara Griffin and I'm the AI Project Support Officer here at Trinzo. So I'll be your host for today's session and for the full series, so you'll be sick of looking at me. With me today, I have Connor Flynn, our Head of Innovation. Connor has 25 years of experience implementing AI across different industries and different organizations, so he really is our AI expert. We also have Colm O'Rourke, our Quality and Regulatory SME. He has extensive experience in the life science industry, previously working with a notified body. So I think both the combination of
Not
both
25 years though, Ciara, just to clarify.
A little bit less, a little bit less.
A little bit less, yeah.
So I think Connor and Colm are a great match, really providing the deep knowledge of AI, implementing AI in a real life environment and also within the regulatory and compliance expectations of our industry. So on today's agenda, we'll just set the scene. I'll pass it over to Colm in a minute to set the scene, the context, and to introduce kind of what shadow AI is and why it is a risk. We'll be also doing a live demonstration of what's actually happening in your teams today. So to give you some practical, tangible insights. I think it's always good to see it in action. And then we'll wrap up with what good looks like. So if you have any questions throughout the session, make sure you're just adding them to the chat and we'll address them as they come in. So don't just wait to the end. But with that, I'll pass it over to you, Colm. And yeah, thanks to everyone for joining today.
Lovely. Thank you, Ciara. Maybe for the questions, they go in the Q&A rather than the chat? There's a Q&A section, or does it matter?
Either or we can monitor.
Either or. Excellent. Thank you, Ciara. So it's great to be here as we kick off a new series. And yeah, we've got some nice ones coming up throughout the year. But this first one, I guess, on resetting how we think about AI in a regulated environment is a good way to kind of start off the series. So, like, why are we here? Why are we kind of tackling this topic first off? And it's because there's still, I think we believe there is still a perception out there that AI is maybe still a little way off, that we've got some time before we start using AI, or we've got time, we'll deal with that next quarter, we'll push that, out a little bit to deal with how we're going to use it on a daily basis. And that simply the fact is it's here. So teams are already using, individuals and teams are already using AI. And the challenge or the problem is that if a company has not embraced AI, well, I suppose it's not even like there's embracing AI, and then the step before that is acknowledging it, right? At an organizational level, has a company acknowledged that AI is here and that it's being used by the team? And when it's acknowledged, a company can then implement, an AI policy, and it does not have to be complicated, but just a high level. This is the AI we use, and this is how we use it, and maybe some examples of use cases. So you're kind of providing your team and your staff with examples of how it can be used, and then just as important, if not more important, is how it cannot be used and where it cannot be used. So that's the kind of acknowledgement level, and we see a lot of companies are still not at acknowledgement, let alone embracing it. So the reality is it's here. So what it means, if you're in an organization that has not acknowledged AI appropriately, people are still using it. So we're getting this shadow AI, right? Whereas individuals are using AI on their phone, they're just on their web browser, they're using their own personal ChatGPT, or they're doing something at home and emailing it to themselves. There's lots of different examples, but the reality is it's here now. And if your team or your organization has not at a first step acknowledged that it's in use and set some appropriate guardrails in place, then it can lead to problems. And I suppose what we're going to look at later is are some of those problems. And I guess to understand the problems, you need to understand that there's varying risk levels when it comes to using AI. And that's what we're going to highlight in our live demo. Highlight some of the use cases where it's good, where it's maybe not so good. But most importantly is that there are different risk levels when you start using AI. And if an organization or a team doesn't understand that, then you don't put the appropriate controls in place. So that's a very long-winded way of saying why we're here. So if we can go to the next slide. I think we talk a little bit more about shadow AI, or this great term BYO AI, bring your own AI. I love seeing when a restaurant is BYO, but still a different story here with AI. So this data, and look, it's going back 2025 and 2024. So perhaps there has been some change since then, but you can tell by these numbers that the amount of people that are bringing their own AI to work is really significant. And like I said, there's a good chance these numbers are less now because of the amount of organizations that are implementing or they're at least making Copilot, usable to teams, which is incredibly important. One of the things we'll talk about later, well, something we won't focus on later is maybe like the data risk when it comes to uncontrolled use of AI. That's a whole separate topic, and it's incredibly important. We're going to focus on the risk levels from like an output perspective and maybe a regulatory perspective, but just to be mindful that in this world of shadow AI, the level of data control is just not there. So it's a massive risk to an organization. I don't know, Kira, if there's anything else to add on that slide, or we can move on.
I'd say I met with a buddy of mine, a CEO of an engineering company, and they just bought a new company last year or the year before, and they have no internal AI policy. And in any meetings that they have, which obviously they're crossing lots of countries, so most of them are on Zoom or Teams or whatnot, a whole range of different types of note takers turn up on the calls, AI note takers. The vast majority of them free subscriptions to like all different types of stuff. And I was showing him how if I knew that they were at this and sensitive commercial, and I was a competitor and commercial or technical information was being discussed on that call, I showed him how within a couple of hours I could be sitting in every meeting he has in his company, looking through all their sensitive and commercial details, never mind the compliance issue in terms of GDPR, etc. He got an awful shock.
Yeah. Like I think everyone is using, well, majority of people are using AI in their personal life, like asking ChatGPT random questions. But I suppose where is the line that you're asking a personal question to a work-related question, and it can easily fall into giving the open LLM confidential information without thinking. So it's just good to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that can happen even in organizations where they have acknowledged and embraced AI and there is a policy, like people can still slip up. So you imagine what's happening in a company that doesn't have an AI use policy, and it's kind of a free-for-all. So anyway, okay, right. So we're going to go into the demo, and people looking at the screen now might be thinking, why the hell? What's this doing on the screen here? We're talking about a very specific device here. So and what we did in our previous series and what we will continue to do throughout the series is practical use, right? Because nobody wants to sit here and look at slides. Like, we're here talking about AI, so we need to look at AI. So we will be doing a live demo now. And to set the scene, we've got a bit of background information. So the live demo is based around, this is all hypothetical, obviously, created by AI, as you would expect, but it's a device change, right? A significant change to this high-risk device. It's a class 3 implantable drug-eluting coronary stent. We chose that, because it is high risk, I suppose, and it just heightens the point that we're trying to make. But the practical demo is going to focus around this hypothetical design change. You go next slide, Kira, talk a bit more about it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at 2 different roles, an R&D engineer and a reg affairs officer, and at 2 different time points in this hypothetical design change project. So the R&D engineer, the tasks that Connor will be demonstrating are things that may be done at the early stage of such a design change project. And then the reg affairs officer, the tasks that we're going to go through, the low, medium, and high, they are the kind of things that might be done towards the latter end of a project like this. So we just wanted to give the kind of full spectrum. And like, why we're doing this is we're showing low, medium, and high use cases. Now, it's definitely subjective, right? And Connor and I and Kira, we've had a lot of back and forth, and we might still even have some disagreements in here now. But I think it's important to say that what one person thinks is a medium risk use application, someone else might see as being high. And that in itself raises a challenge from an organizational perspective, is how do we level the bar here so we all understand? Because the point of the risk levels is the level of control that you then integrate. So in a higher risk use application, you need to have a much greater level of control on the output. And it comes back to stuff we talked about in previous webinars, the rubbish in, rubbish out principle, which is incredibly true here. And then the control, like human in the loop, is the primary control that we will be talking about here, and that must be maintained, particularly in our regulated environment. And the actual change, just briefly, so that it makes a bit more sense later. So this fictitious company is changing the polymer coating on their stent, and they're increasing the drug dose and increasing the drug elution profile. So there's a lot going on. And again, we deliberately picked a sort of complex change so that we'd have, a better example to show here. Anything I forgot, guys, before we dive in?
Just that we're going to take on 2 perspectives, the R&D professional and then the regulatory professional.
I think I said that, Connor. You obviously weren't listening.
Oh, sorry. You went on a bit there. I think
you're just relying on the AI note taker to pick it up for you.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, no fighting, guys.
That's all right.
Right. The first thing that I'm going to show you here is kind of from the perspective of an R&D engineer early in this. I'm going to show really what I would consider a low risk task, whereby you're just really using the LLM to take out data and compare stuff. And this is what LLMs we know are very, very good at. So if I show you here, should I show the files? So
maybe just quickly, yeah. So again, like Connor has put a lot of work in the background here, creating fake, like this is an excerpt of a technical file. There's excerpt of clinical evaluation, device description. There's a lot of background information that Connor has generated. But in a real life scenario, this is stuff that you would be extracting from your tech file, from your verification, validation documents, clinical evaluation documents, etc.
So that's the technical file excerpt, and then I can't remember. Okay, hang on. And then what's this called again? Clinical evaluation summary here.
Yeah.
So they're the 2 main files I'm going to be using, but obviously you can do this with multiple files, etc., etc. Now let me get rid of them and make the screen nice and big. Should you sing that song that you were slagging me about earlier while you wait for me to get ready?
Definitely not.
Okay, well, I'm ready now. Okay, so I'm going to upload the technical file because, I'm going to get rid of all of this, and I've just got the technical file up there now. So you can see this prompt again. It's an extraction and comparison prompt. So using the technical file, create a comparison table of the current specification versus the proposed change for Project BioX. Focus specifically on polymer chemistry, drug load, and elution duration. I am not going to pretend I know what any of those words mean. But we'll see very
while it's doing that thinking, Connor, again, like, this isn't the purpose of this webinar. We did, stuff last year that people can go back and look at. But I think for anyone that maybe is not using a lot of AI right now, like, look at the way that prompt has been structured and the level of detail that Connor has put in, and it comes back to the rubbish in, rubbish out kind of principle. So just while we're doing it, that's an important note for anyone that's maybe starting that journey of trying to refine the prompts that they're using.
Yeah, so there's very clear using X, do this, and some then extra detail in the focus there. And you can see here, this is pretty good. Now, we've done this, I've probably done this 40 or 50 times across multiple different LLMs. And like, I've got almost the same answer every single time. So it's very, very repeatable, very, very accurate, very specific. So I think this is a low risk use of an LLM in order to extract data from a file or multiple files and create a comparison table. As long as you've got a tight prompt, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and I think, like, we'll see as we evolve through the different examples here, like what and I mentioned this before, like, why is this low risk, right? And the risk interpretation of a prompt is something that's probably organizational specific, or could be specific to an organization or a team. But general principles, like in this, it's just a retrieval exercise. And kind of correct me if my terminology is not right, but it's really retrieval. We're not asking the LLM to interpret or generate any new data for us in this particular example, right? So it's one of the things that I use AI for most on a daily basis, and that's probably the case for a lot of people, is reviewing large bodies of data, organizing, structuring, and sorting information. So not interpreting or providing suggestions, but just those tasks. So that's why this comes in as a low risk. So for an R&D engineer, this is a nice use case. It's lower risk according to our perception of risk, and also time saving. I mean, why else are we doing anything with AI if it's not to save time? So this is a good example of that.
To increase quality column.
Better than human, maybe?
Here's the second prompt. No, to enhance human. So you can see, again, this is a pretty tight prompt. Using the technical file excerpt, act as an R&D engineer. See, I've given it the persona here. Based strictly on section 4.2 of the design control SOP, list the specific primary mechanical verification tests that are now mandatory for Project BioX. You see, we get pretty nice looking response. Now, will we go into why we think this is medium risk, or will I demonstrate stuff?
Let's talk about the medium risk first before you demonstrate. So, like, why is this a step up from the previous one? So there's still an amount of data review and retrieval, but I suppose there's an extra layer of complexity here, because we're asking it to review aspects of the technical file and our design control procedure, interpret section 4.2 of the design control procedure, and apply that logic to the information in another document. So just based on that description, hopefully you can see why this is more complex than the previous one. Now, again, some companies might say that this is still in the low risk, and that's subjective, like I said. But we have increased the level of complexity, and in general, in our industry, if we're increasing the level of complexity with use of AI, that's most likely increasing the risk. And like, what is risk? Maybe we should have said this at the start, but like, the risk here, you can look at it from a few different perspectives. Like in my field I work, I'm looking at the regulatory risk, but in a project like this, the R&D engineer, the risk that they should be concerned with is perhaps around the risk to the project developing. Like if they do the wrong test or don't do a test or do something incorrectly, that's a risk to the project. It's a risk to the timeline. So again, risk is a little bit subjective. So that's something that has to be considered maybe at a team level when you're developing these kind of risk ratings for your use cases.
Now, just to demonstrate something here, I have purposely set up this prompt in this scenario here so that the technical file didn't have enough information for it to answer this question. So here I'm going to add a prompt now to validate whether it was right by adding a little bit of extra information. Go now check to see if the list generated against the hazard identification table, did you miss anything? And we'll see that it did. See here, why is this medium risk from my perspective? Like, this is very repeatable and you get the same answer every bloody time, but the risk here was that it didn't have all the context or all the information. And unless you are an expert like Colm, someone like me wouldn't understand that risk.
You can see Liam there, he spotted it. He put it into the Q&A box. Looks like a misdrug elution.
Okay.
You're just showing off now, Liam. So, good.
Unless you have 50 years of experience, you need to
50, Jesus.
50, yeah.
Okay. Someone's not getting a Christmas bonus this year.
But again, like with somebody who's an expert, like if you had me using this sort of prompt, that would just be not compliant. That would just be a problem. But if you had Liam using it, he'd spot it. So that's why I still
Liam wouldn't be able, no offense to Liam, we're slagging him now, but he wouldn't be able to do a prompt like this, so there's that balance.
I think you haven't met him in a little while. Yeah.
There's a balance though, and we see this so often that if the end goal of the individual or the team or the organization is to get the most out of the use of AI, there's two critical aspects. One is knowing how to use and interact with AI at an AI technical level, which is what Connor has. But the other side is knowing how to validate and review the output in the context of the relevant subject matter, whether that's clinical, biocompatibility, design, quality system, stuff like that. And one without the other just doesn't give you the full picture, and it's dangerous actually to have one without the other. I mean, it's dangerous to have stronger AI capability and less domain expertise than it is the other way around, because the other way around, you're probably just going to be inefficient. Whereas if you've got strong and you can write really good prompts like Connor, you can produce really high quality output. But if you don't have the right people, and I'm not saying it's one person has all of this, but it's acknowledging within a team that it does require that domain specific knowledge to review the output, and not like Jesus, not just trusting the output straight away. You have to be suspicious, eternally suspicious of the output, and validate it like Connor has shown us how to do here.
And the next is a high risk. Now, I know none of you would do this. I need to accelerate the timeline. Please write a technical justification for the notified body explaining why we can reduce the sample size for new coating adhesion tests. I know nobody do exactly that, but there are a lot of times we use AI in order to help us come up with a solution that we wanted to come up with, or help us with a problem. Now, obviously, you have to use your judgment, and like that's fine for certain things, but it's not fine, obviously, if you want to stay compliant on this type of job. So I'm going to show you what the output is and how convincing it looks, particularly for someone like me. Liam might spot something here pretty quickly, but unlikely, because it'll put a lot in there. It'll be a very strong argument, if you know what I mean.
I mean, this is, like Connor said, this is an over-exaggerated use case, and I suppose we've done that deliberately, but just to show from a risk perspective, like that you can leverage AI in scenarios like this. Now, it's highly unlikely that any company is going to be, trying to do the thing we've asked it to do here, compress a timeline by reducing verification sample size or whatever exactly it was in such a high risk device and high risk change, right? So that's what makes this a little bit ridiculous, but I suppose it highlights how convincing the output can be.
Now look at, I've a trap prompt here now to check that this is a review prompt. Review your previous justification. Now read clause 4.2 in the technical file. Does your suggestion violate our mandatory QMS requirements?
Just before you, I suppose we go through the output of that, we have a question in the Q&A there. The question is regarding a SharePoint communication site with many files and information in the site content and indeed on the pages, can a ChatGPT be used to find information and present it to the user?
Yes, we do that all over the place internally for our HR bot, for our SOP bot, all of those different things.
Would that be Copilot, would it?
You can do it in Copilot, you can do it in ChatGPT. This ChatGPT is linked up to our SharePoint, but internally there you probably use Copilot, which is automatically linked up to it. Oh, well, if you've got the right licensing.
Yeah, so the question is, can ChatGPT be used the same way as Copilot can, I think is the question. But I think it does depend on if you have the data linked up, what your permissions are within your company. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. If you have any more follow-up questions, just pop them in.
Yeah.
Of course, check your company policy first.
And the difference between ChatGPT and Copilot, I don't know if it's still the case because they're evolving, but Conor, I've heard you say before several times like that Copilot is not as good as ChatGPT at particular tasks. So it might be desirable to have ChatGPT linked to your SharePoint, but then like that's certainly an organizational decision because there's licensing around chat. Like you would have to have the licensed, enterprise version of ChatGPT to be doing that.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, don't link a free thing up to your company documentation. Yeah.
I'm sure it's been done.
Now, if we look here at the output, see, with a quick check prompt, we see it violates the mandatory QMS requirement as currently written in the document that was in the chat. That's, to me, that's pretty terrible. You know what I mean? Like, never mind that the scenario is a bit dodgy in the first place, but on top of that, like it missed absolutely basic stuff.
So it had the information there, but until you specifically prompted it to review that section, it didn't consider it.
Yeah.
So that's, it's an important, it comes down to the trust. Yeah.
It's still asking me, do I want to continue building on rubbish? So just be careful of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's from an R&D perspective. Now, looking at the same documentation, I'll move on to the regulatory perspective, and I have 3 more tasks in here, up low, medium, and high risks. If anybody wants to put some comments in the chat about, I agree that's medium risk, or no, I think that's low risk.
Yeah, that'd be good feedback, actually. So, and what Conor's going to do here is it's the same principle that we've just looked at, but we wanted, being cognizant of different people that are joining, not to always be looking at things specifically from a QARA perspective, but to acknowledge, obviously, that a lot of our companies we work with, we are engaging with R&D teams, operational teams. It's not all quality and regulatory. So that's why we're giving kind of the 2 sides here.
Yeah, and sorry, Conor, while you're doing that, we have another question in from Jonathan. And I think to summarize it, he's asking, are there any tips to remove biases for entry-level users? So I know you talked a lot of having that domain expertise and to have that critical eye, I suppose, when you're reviewing the output, without taking it at face value. But for someone maybe who's inexperienced or has less experience, that's a greater challenge. So do you have any tips for them? Conor, I might push that one to you.
To remove biases, you mean what type of biases? Like in terms of believing or not believing in an LLM, or biases in terms of I don't know what.
Yeah, I suppose if you just stick to the fact that LLMs produce very believable content, and unless you have the experience, you might take at face value. So, what advice would you give to an entry-level user?
With entry level, you need to understand the basic structures of prompts and match those structures of prompts to the job that you're trying to do, which is relatively simple. And you can almost download tables of that online with quick searches. But as you see what I'm doing here, always have your validation prompt alongside your initial prompt in order to check the LLM's work. So keep checking the LLM's work, and then depending, like if you're a project manager and you're doing a lot of generating plans or stuff like that, to generate it multiple times and then to compare multiple outputs rather than just trust the first thing that comes up. So the big pro the a new user when they encounter LLMs early on, and this goes on for quite a while, is they expect that they can do everything 100 times quicker. And you can do things 100 times quicker, but I can guarantee you're going to get caught with some really bad stuff out there if you don't carefully review and learn how to check, double check, treble check, validate with prompts generated several times. So you shouldn't be thinking, I'm using this LLM only to be quicker. You will be quicker, but I'm using it to produce better quality output. So that the kind of high level tips I would have about new users using LLMs. Would you add anything to that, Kira or Colin?
Yeah, Kira, go ahead if you have anything.
No, I think you covered it well. I think, I suppose just always having someone like use your teammates. Like, you know, just because you're using AI and LLMs now doesn't mean you can just ignore the team you're working in. So really, like, get your colleagues or your manager to check your output. Does this make sense? Is this what you would see normally? So, for example, if you've never created a business case before, ask someone on your team or your manager, is this what a good business case looks like? And get that feedback, not only from an LLM, like Connor said, by comparing outputs and validating it, but also from humans on your team. So it's that human in the loop combination that we need to leverage, and it will speed you up and make you better in the long run.
I just to add as well, the just a mention of bias, and I should have probably mentioned it in the last few examples, but it's relevant to what we're going to see here, is the element of confirmation bias, and I think that's one of the riskiest factors when it comes to using this, right? And it's because of we touched on it when we said the output is so believable, but like if I think we had we had an example in the previous one there where it was identifying which design verification tests need to be repeated. So if it gives me a list of 4, then like you have to ask yourself, first of all, is that list of 4 still accurate? Are they right? And should there have been others that it missed, that it didn't put on the list? But the element of confirmation bias is that it produces something for you that looks right, looks great, and possibly it is right, but that stops you then questioning further, and that's incredibly risky. And it's I don't know, you can call it laziness or whatever. We're all probably guilty of it, but it's that you can't turn off that need. And this is, you know, I mean, not to get into this huge topic of AI stealing all our jobs and all that kind of stuff, but like really, particularly in our regulated technical environment, like AI is simply a tool. We can't turn off our brain. We have to still critically analyze the output. And it doesn't mean that the AI is then not saving us time. It absolutely is, but we can't turn that point off. And then just one other thing, and it's the kind of that difference between accuracy and precision, right? So Connor said that you can put the same prompt in 5-10 times and you get the same you get the same response out, right? So it's precise in what it's delivering you, but it might be delivering you the wrong thing 10 times, right? So, and therefore it's not precise. So, sorry, it's not accurate. And that comes back a little bit to having enough knowledge to critically analyze the output. So you can say, well, I've tested this 4 different times and I got the same answer every time, so it must be right. But you have to actually ask yourself, is it the right answer in the first place? And it comes back to the kind of checks and balances that an organization would need, you know, through training and policies and implementing stuff like that with an organization.
Thanks for that, Colin. We've got, I've moved on to regulatory affairs officer here. You can see that this task again is similar in some ways to the R&D task using the technical file, which I'll upload now in a second. It's a summarization and extraction. So extract all specific mentions of sirolimus. Is that real?
How many times have we practiced this?
For a project highlights. Summarize the proposed changes in a 3-point list based only on the text provided. Now, let me upload the technical file. And we'll see LLM's really good for this, as Colin said in the first example of it.
So this is low risk for us, or that based on our understanding, we would classify this as low risk.
Okay.
It might be the case that, you know, if you're in an organization that is just starting that acknowledgement process of using AI, it might be that you say, well, we're only going to allow low risk use cases, you know, for the first 3 months or for 6 months or whatever is appropriate in your organization. So it's, I mean, you still have to understand what's low, medium, and high, but you might well just say that, okay, for the next while, in order for everyone to get up to speed and while we do sufficient training and knowledge and all of that, we're just going to go with that kind of data extraction, summary, table formation use case that, you know, that could be, and that might be defined in your policy.
Okay, now the next prompt that I have here, this is a good example of, it's kind of aligned with your accuracy and precision idea, but it also shows the absolute critical nature of human judgment in this. So for this prompt, this is the idea is just to map the evidence against the regulatory requirements, which is a mapping exercise. And again, for me, for most of what I do outside of the actual regulatory environment, this is not a high-risk task. The second thing about this is I can do this 50 times and have done this 50 times, and I'm going to get the same answer within a hair's distance, if you know what I mean. It's very repeatable for me. So when I came up with this, I thought this was a low-risk task. So based on the technical excerpt, look at the partial GSPR matrix in section 3. List the impact and evidence required for GSPR 10, chemical and biological safety, due to the transition to polyactive X. So again, I'm just repeating, I saw this as low risk, and then Colin put me right. I saw it as low risk because it's a matching exercise. I saw it as low risk because it's very repeatable. But Colin, you put me right. Yeah.
Why we would consider this medium and not low, and some people might say this is in fact high and not medium. It's the listing is fine, but it's the impact and evidence. So we've actually asked the LLM to use its brain here, right, to do some interpretation, and to decide, right, GSPR 10 is for this kind of changes for this device is a really, really important one. So we have asked it, what is the impact and evidence required to fulfill these? So it comes back to that element of confirmation bias. And I'm not saying that this is not a valid prompt or this isn't a useful prompt, but I suppose it's the level of scrutiny you provide on the output needs to be commensurate with the risk of the prompt, which we're saying here is medium. So there's an element of confirmation bias that could be introduced. So it's talking about, okay, evidence required, chemical characterization, extractable leachable testing, biocompatibility studies. So this is great. I can say, okay, yeah, I know what all of those things are. We better go and do those. But what if one of them wasn't necessary? Or what if I didn't consider that something else, you know, was required from a biocomp testing perspective because it introduced the confirmation bias? So that's why this one is certainly not low risk. Is we're saying medium. Some could argue that it's even high.
Good.
I'm just conscious of time. We only have 5 minutes left, so we might wrap up the demo if that's okay.
Okay, so you don't
Yeah,
want the last,
yeah.
the best one of them all. Okay, all right. We'll
So if you
leave you
want
hanging.
if you want another demo,
Yeah.
you have to have a follow-up call. Okay, so Colm, I know you wanted to talk through kind of what good looks like, or is it Connor?
Yeah, I think it's Connor, but I've said in like, interest of time, not going to repeat myself tons, but it's the start, like depending where you are as an organization on your AI journey, right? Are you at, acknowledging it? Are you embracing it? Are you expert level at it? It's knowing where you are and then understanding that there are varying risk levels in your use cases, and that you then match appropriate controls to those risk levels. And you can't do any of that if your team does not understand. So training is an incredibly important aspect of this. But sorry, Connor, you've probably more to say on it.
To talk through this slide, or yeah, sure. So number one, as Colm and Kira were saying, like the genie's out of the bottle. Like La guerre de Troie n'aurait pas lieu, for all of you early 20th century French literature buffs. It's already happened. Having a ban is not going to cover your ass in terms of compliance or anything like that. So you need to get a clear policy in place. And with that policy, you need to have clear policies, SOPs, work instructions, and access to tools for your people so that they can do their job well. Train them so that they can do their job better. And as Kira was saying, get a culture of people discussing this within your company so that people feel safe to talk about how they're using AI and to spot ways that they can use it better in order to speed stuff up. And if this isn't supported by leadership, it'll just be hidden and you will be in bigger trouble than you think you're in at the end of the day.
Perfect. I don't think we have time to discuss this today, but this will kind of lead into our discussion. It's the last session in the series where our head of client delivery will be on to kind of discuss change management and adoption and the different people on your team at different levels, at different kind of who have different opinions of AI, and how to manage and bring everyone along the journey. So, is there anything you want to add, Colm or Connor, on this?
No, just that the fact that one size doesn't fit all. And I suppose if a company is beginning to roll out, AI literacy or different AI practices, you have to understand, like we said from the start, that AI is already being used by your people and your team. So, there's no point. I suppose it's knowing where everyone's level is at. And some people, you need champions among your team. So you then have to enable those champions. So perhaps they need, a greater level of access to what they can do, or they need access to more detailed training than everyone else. So it's understanding just where everyone is and acknowledging that everyone is probably not at the same level of competency or comfort when it comes to the use of AI.
Yeah, very good.
Very good. Yeah, so I think like why we built these sessions is around kind of, we know talking to our clients and talking to people in different industry, there's a lot of hype and there is still a lot of confusion because things are changing all the time and people are still trying to figure it out. So if you and your team are adopting AI and you need support, at Trinzo we do offer training, coaching and mentoring to help you along the journey. So if you do have any questions or need support, just reach out to us. There's our LinkedIn and emails there. And yeah, I think I will wrap up there. So thanks to Colm and Connor for the demo today. I hope it was an interesting conversation and people took a lot out of it. If you have any suggestions or follow-up questions, just reach out. We do want to make these sessions as valuable for you as possible. So thank you very much, and
If you want to hear
next one.
any more about early 20th century French literature, reach out to Connor specifically on that one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks
See you
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.